My friends kept forcing me to date until one woman changed everything. I shoved my phone at Sarah so hard, the screen knocked against her wine glass. "Read what they texted me," I hissed. We were in the middle of their crowded apartment living room. Music too loud, people laughing too big. Fairy lights strung everywhere. Sam froze mid-pour over the little bar cart, whiskey bottle hovering above a row of plastic cups, as Sarah's smile slid right off her face. She took my phone like it might burn her. Her eyes skimmed the screen once, then again, slower. I watched her pupils dart, watched the color drain from her cheeks. The room kept moving. Someone whooped at a beer pong shot. Someone else yelled for more ice. But around our little triangle at the kitchen island, everything felt suddenly too bright and too sharp. "Mark, what is this?" she whispered, voice already shaking. "You tell me," I said. My voice came out low and ugly. "That's from the last woman you set me up with. The one from your yoga class." Sam set the bottle down with a soft clink. "Okay, can everyone just— You're nice, but I'm not attracted to you," I read over her shoulder, my throat tightening on each word. "I feel like your friends ambushed me with this. Please don't put me in this position again." People were starting to glance over. I could see it in my peripheral vision. Curious looks, a couple of whispers. My scars always drew attention, but this was different. This was a show. Sarah slammed my phone down on the island so hard it bounced. "We're just trying to save you from dying alone, Mark," she snapped. Loud. Too loud. Heads turned. Conversation dipped. I felt the familiar flush creep up my neck, the way it always did when someone said the quiet part out loud. Dying alone. Like that was the worst possible fate. Like being with someone, anyone, was worth any humiliation. I took a breath that tasted like stale beer and cheap cologne. "You don't get it," I said. "I've chosen to be single. I've told you that. Do you have any right to keep pushing me?" Sam stepped around the island, hands up like I was a skittish animal. "Dude, it's not like that. We invited people, that's all. It's just a party." "Really?" I shot back. I gestured at the doorway. "So, Laura just happens to be coming tonight? Your coworker, Laura, that you've been hyping up for months? This isn't another triple date audition?" Sarah's jaw clenched. "We thought you'd like her." "What you thought," I said, "is that you could parade me out again like some charity case and hope my personality would magically override my face before she had a chance to say no." The word face hung there between us. I saw both of them flinch, their eyes flicking just once, to the right side of my cheek where the scar tissue pulled my skin tight. It ran from my temple to my jawline, a shiny, twisted reminder of a car accident from a decade ago. I knew every millimeter of it. Other people pretended not to see it until they couldn't pretend anymore. The front door buzzer sounded shrill and insistent over the music. Everyone's head turned toward the hallway. Someone yelled, "That's probably Laura," in that sing-song tone people use when they're not reading the room at all. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my jacket off the back of a bar stool, fingers fumbling with the sleeves. For a second, I couldn't tell if I was putting it on to leave or just to armor myself. The hallway stretched out in front of me, a tunnel to yet another moment, where some stranger's eyes would flick from my scar to my friends and silently ask, "You did this to me?" Sam moved to block me. "Mark, don't be dramatic, man. Just meet her. It's not like we told her you're ugly," I supplied, my voice flat. His mouth snapped shut. The doorbell rang again, closer this time as someone buzzed her up. Footsteps in the stairwell. Laughter outside. I stood there in the hallway, halfway between the door and the living room, jacket half on, half off. My heart hammered so loud I could feel it in my teeth. If I walked out now, I'd be the jerk who bailed on his friend's party, and maybe on a woman who hadn't personally done anything wrong. If I stayed, I'd be the surprise no one asked for, but everyone had to politely endure. My hand went to the doorknob. I froze. Was walking out selfish? Or finally sane? A couple of hours earlier, I'd been in my tiny bathroom, facing that same scar in the mirror under the unforgiving yellow light. I'd traced it with a fingertip, the way I always did before social events, like I needed to re-meet the person I was about to be. "It's not a date. It's just a party," I'd muttered to my reflection. "You're going to your friend's house. That's it." I didn't believe myself then either. On the edge of the sink, my phone buzzed with a notification. I'd already been scrolling through old messages from women Sam and Sarah had set me up with over the years, like some masochistic ritual. "You're nice, but I'm not attracted to you. You're really sweet, but I'm just not feeling that spark. I think we'd be better as friends. Sorry if that hurts." It was like reading the same script with different fonts. None of them were cruel. In some ways, that made it worse. They were kind, apologetic, and it still felt like being gently pushed off a cliff. Weeks before, at a bar with Sam and Sarah, this whole Laura thing had sounded almost hopeful. Sarah had been waving her phone at me, eyes bright from 2 margaritas. "You're going to love her," she'd said, shoving the screen in my face. A smiling woman with dark hair and thick glasses looked back at me. "She doesn't care about looks. She's perfect for you." I'd stared at the photo, then at Sarah. "Has she seen my picture?" Sarah's gaze flicked to Sam. It was quick, but I'd known her for 10 years. I knew her tells. Her mouth twisted, and she finally muttered, "Not yet." I'd put my beer down harder than I meant to. Foam sloshed over the rim onto the sticky table. "So the plan is what, exactly? You just spring me on her at your party and hope she's too polite to run screaming?" "Dude, no one's running screaming," Sam had said, laughing a little too loudly. "You have a great personality, and once she talks to you, she'll see that." "And if she doesn't?" I'd asked. "If she feels ambushed? If she sends me another text like those?" I'd tap my phone. You think that's fun for me? For her? Sarah's face had tightened. We're just trying to help. You're the one who keeps saying you don't want to die alone. I also keep saying I don't want any more blind setups, I'd shot back. If you keep ambushing women with my face, I'll stop coming around. I mean it. They'd stared at me like I'd just threatened to burn our entire friendship to the ground. Now, standing in their hallway, with the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs, that conversation felt like a premonition I hadn't taken seriously enough. My hand slipped off the doorknob. I backed away from the entrance, heart pounding. Behind me, the living room noise swelled again as if the party itself was impatient for its next piece of entertainment. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and made a choice. I stepped away from the door. By the time the knock came, I was back in the living room, jacket on, but not zipped, standing near the window. Sam shot me a confused glare and went to answer it. Sarah hovered by the kitchen island, wringing a napkin between her hands. The door opened. I caught just a glimpse of Laura over a cluster of people, dark hair in a loose bun, a bright scarf, a bottle of wine in hand. She smiled as she stepped inside, the kind of easy smile you give at the threshold of a stranger's party. I walked straight past Sam and stopped in the doorway. Hey, I said to her. You're Laura, right? She blinked, thrown off by being intercepted so quickly. Yeah? I'm Mark, I said. Before anything else happens tonight, I want you to know I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at them. I jerked my thumb back toward the kitchen where Sam and Sarah stood frozen. And I'm not going to be anyone's surprise date, so if they told you anything like that, you're free to turn around and go home. No hard feelings. Her eyes flicked to my scars, then to my face, then to my friends. I watched the realization dawn in real time. Her smile faltered, confusion knitting her brows. She said slowly, they just said it was a party. I didn't know there were expectations. Exactly, I said. So let's kill the expectations now. I stepped aside so she could enter fully if she wanted. For a beat, no one moved. Then someone in the living room shouted, Laura, over here, and the spell broke. She gave me a small nod, something like thanks, something like I'm sorry, and slipped past me into the crowd. I walked straight through the kitchen without looking at Sam or Sarah and out onto the balcony. The November air slapped me in the face, cold and sharp. I sucked it in like I'd been underwater. A moment later, the sliding door opened behind me. Sam stepped out, letting it click shut. The party noise muffled to a dull thump. You're overreacting, he said immediately, shoving his hands into his pockets. That was dramatic. I leaned on the railing, staring at the city lights. Send her home, I said. Or at least tell her the truth. I'm done with blind setups. I'm not doing this anymore. He huffed. We just want you to be happy. Everyone compromises if they want love. That's just life. Compromise is I'll live in the suburbs if you want a yard, I said. Compromise is not. I'll let my friends trick strangers into dating me. Behind the glass, I could see Sarah in the kitchen, talking animatedly to another friend. Her hands flew as she spoke. At one point, she gestured toward the balcony, and I watched the other woman's eyes widen, then narrow. I saw her lips shape the words, his insecurity problem, and something in my chest twisted. Do I owe it to you? I asked quietly. Sam frowned. What? To keep trying, I said. To keep going on dates I know are going to traumatize me and some woman who didn't sign up for this, just so you can live out your little triple date fantasy. Do I owe you that because you're my friends? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence between us felt heavier than the cold. Inside, someone turned the music up. The bass vibrated through the metal railing under my hands. I'd never felt more separate from a room I was technically still in. I'm leaving, I said finally. You don't have to send Laura home. That's your mess to clean up. But I'm not staying here as your project. Come on, man, Sam said, but his voice lacked conviction. I slid the balcony door open, walked through the kitchen without stopping. Sarah turned toward me, eyes wet and furious. You blew up over nothing, she hissed under her breath. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You embarrassed me in front of everyone, I replied. Again. My phone buzzed as I pulled it off the counter. I didn't look at it. I grabbed my shoes from the entryway, shoved them on, and walked out into the stairwell. By the time I reached the sidewalk, the buzzing had turned into a steady stream. Once I got home and my apartment door clicked shut behind me, I finally glanced at the screen. A wall of messages from Sarah. The latest one was a long block of text previewed on my lock screen. Can we please talk properly tomorrow? I'm sorry you're upset, but this isn't fair. I didn't open it. Instead, I tossed my phone on the couch, collapsed into my desk chair, and stared at the blank document on my computer screen. The cursor blinked at me like it was impatient. Without overthinking it, I opened Reddit. The title came first. I, 35 am very unattractive and have made peace with being alone. My friends name F30s won't give up on trying to set me up with someone. What do? Then the words poured out. Years of swallowed humiliation, of your nice butt texts, of being told I was self-sabotaging when I said I didn't want to date anymore. I described Sam and Sarah, the party, the ambush with Laura. I even described my scars, the way they'd become this unspoken third presence in every room. By the time I hit post, my hands were shaking. I paced between my desk and the couch, the cheap rug scratching under my bare feet, while the first replies trickled in, then more. My phone vibrated, my laptop pinged. Strangers from all over the world weighed in on my life like it was a TV show. Some called my friends controlling, boundary stomping. Others said I was hiding behind self-hatred, using my scars as an excuse not to risk vulnerability. A few said both things could be true. One top comment stuck with me. Your choice to be single is valid, it said. It's like coming out. Forcing dates on you is like forcing someone to be straight because you've decided you know what's best for them. I stared at that sentence for a long time. If my choice to be alone was like coming out, then what did it mean that I was so certain no woman could possibly want me? Was I doing the same thing in reverse? Deciding for hypothetical women that they couldn't be attracted to me, that they were too shallow or too kind or too something to make that choice for themselves? My brain didn't like that question. It made me feel exposed in a different way. My sister Nina called after seeing a vague rant I'd posted on my own social media about friends who don't listen. What happened? She demanded as soon as I picked up. I could hear traffic in the background, the honk of a horn. And don't say nothing. I know your nothing voice. I summarized the party, the texts, the Reddit post. Mark, she said, sighing, I love that the internet is validating your boundaries, but maybe talk to someone whose job isn't to farm up votes, like a therapist? I can't afford a therapist, I said automatically. You can afford to DoorDash Thai food twice a week, she shot back. Also, there are sliding scale clinics. I'll help you look. Just don't let Sam and Sarah be the only mirror you look into, or Reddit. After we hung up, I finally opened Sarah's long text. It was a mess of apologies and justifications. She said she was only trying to help, that she couldn't stand watching me give up, that she and Sam just wanted me to experience love like we have. Buried in the middle was a genuine sounding, I'm sorry I hurt you, but it was padded on all sides by, you misunderstood, and we didn't think you'd react like that. At the end, she asked to meet for coffee. No pressure, she wrote. We just want to talk properly. My thumb hovered over the call button. My heart pounded in my ears like I was back in that hallway. I could keep stewing online, letting strangers validate my anger, or I could sit across from the two people who knew me best and see if there was anything left to salvage. I hit call. A couple of days later, I sat in a small cafe near downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and chalkboard menus. The smell of espresso and burnt sugar clung to the air. Sam and Sarah sat across from me at a tiny round table, both looking like they hadn't slept well. Sam had dark circles under his eyes. Sarah's hair was pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, a half-drunk latte cooling in front of her. I'm sorry, she said, before I'd even taken my coat off. For the party. For everything. I slid into the chair and wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. More for something to do than because I wanted it. What exactly are you sorry for, I asked. Because it matters. She swallowed. For not listening when you said you didn't want to date. For inviting Laura without telling either of you what we were doing. For this. She pulled her phone out and scrolled. For never showing any of the women your picture. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want them to prejudge you before they met you. I thought your personality would win them over. I let out a humorless laugh. So you used my personality to trick women into overlooking my face, I said. That's what that is. Another kind of dishonesty, even if you meant well. Sam winced. We didn't think of it like that. I know you didn't, I said. That's the problem. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Seeing those texts you showed us, that hurt. I'm not going to lie. It finally hit me that we've been using you to live out this stupid triple date fantasy. Like, we got together and immediately started picturing couples trips and game nights with you and whoever. We made your love life about us. There was something so naked about hearing him admit that I almost felt bad for him. Almost. So what now? I asked. You stop setting me up or you just get sneakier about it? Sarah shook her head quickly. No more matchmaking, I promise. We invited you to game night next week. Just a few coworkers, no setups, no surprises. We want to, I don't know, start over? I studied them. They looked genuinely wrecked, guilty, afraid of losing me. Part of me wanted to punish them, to make them feel as small as I'd felt reading those texts. Another part of me remembered the years of movie nights, hospital visits after my accident, them bringing me soup when I was sick. Fine, I said slowly. I'll come. But if there's even a whiff of matchmaking, I'm gone. I mean it. Relief flooded their faces. Sarah even reached out like she was going to touch my hand, then thought better of it. As we stood up to leave, she said almost too casually, oh, by the way, Laura's going to be there, but just as a friend. She knows it's not anything. My stomach flipped. I kept my face neutral. Okay, I said. Then she's just another person at game night. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window and tried not to think about how my heart had sped up at the mention of her name. Game night at Sam and Sarah's looked different from the party. Fewer people, no blaring music, just a coffee table covered in pizza boxes and board games, the smell of melted cheese hanging in the air. Laura was already there when I arrived, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting through cards. She looked up as I walked in and gave me a small, cautious smile. Hey, she said. Mark, right? Yeah, I said, shrugging off my jacket. Hey. We ended up on the same team for a complicated cooperative board game I'd never played before. Within minutes, we were trading sarcastic commentary, like we'd known each other for months. No, don't listen to him, she said, pointing at Sam. He clearly wants us all to die in this dungeon. You're just mad I stole your treasure, I retorted. Wow, victim blaming already, she shot back, grinning. Every time she laughed at something I said, a little knot in my chest loosened. It felt dangerously good. Later, in the kitchen, grabbing drinks, we found ourselves alone. The hum of conversation from the living room drifted in. So, IT guy, huh? She said, opening the fridge. Sarah said you do something with servers, which sounds like wizardry to me. More like glorified janitor for other people's bad decisions. What about you? I know you and Sarah work together, but that's it. She rolled her eyes. I fight with spreadsheets and middle managers all day. It's glamorous. You wouldn't understand. We swapped horror stories about crashed systems and clueless users and a particular software vendor we both loathed. It was easy. Too easy. I kept waiting for her gaze to snag on my scars and stay there, for her expression to shift into that polite pity I knew so well. At one point, I made a self-deprecating joke. I don't even remember the setup now, but it ended with, "Hey, at least I'm hard to look at, so people don't bother me at my desk." Laura's brow furrowed. The easy smile faded. "Why do you say stuff like that?" she asked quietly. I shrugged, suddenly wishing I could rewind the last 10 seconds. "It's just true." She set her soda can down. "You know I already saw your photo, right?" she said. "Months ago in a work group chat." My stomach dropped. "What?" She took a breath. "Some genius thought it would be funny to send a screenshot from Sarah's Instagram, of you at some barbecue, with a comment like, 'Guess who Sarah's trying to set up her friend with?'" The room seemed to tilt. My hand tightened around my drink. "I shut it down," she added quickly. "I told them it wasn't okay. I messaged Sarah and said if she wanted to introduce us, she should talk to me like a human being, not whatever that was. I thought she did, but then the party happened and, yeah?" I stared at the countertop. Rage and humiliation and something like gratitude warred in my chest. My image, my face, my scar, passed around as a joke in some group chat. It wasn't new. Versions of that had happened before. But hearing it laid out so bluntly with my best friend's name attached made my skin crawl. "And she never told me," I said, more to myself than to Laura. "I'm sorry," Laura said. "I should have said something sooner. I just didn't know you then. It felt like overstepping." I was torn. Part of me wanted to storm into the living room and demand answers from Sarah. Part of me wanted to thank Laura for defending me to people who didn't even know me. Another part of me wanted to walk out the front door and never speak to any of them again. "Thank you," I said finally, my voice rough, "for saying something. Back then and now." She nodded, eyes soft. "You didn't deserve that. None of it." Silence stretched between us, thick with all the things we weren't saying. "So," she said eventually, forcing a lighter tone, "want to come over tomorrow night? I've got a stack of terrible sci-fi movies and no one to mock them with." "As friends?" I asked automatically. She tilted her head. "As two people who like pizza and bad movies. You can call it whatever you want." I nodded before I could overthink it. "Yeah, okay." On the bus ride home that night, her invitation played on a loop in my head. I tried to tell myself it meant nothing, that she was being nice, that she was just a decent person who felt bad for the guy her coworkers had mocked. But when I texted Nina and she immediately replied, "Is this a date?" I didn't know what to say. Laura's apartment the next night was small and cozy, all soft lamps and mismatched throw pillows. A cheesy sci-fi movie played on her TV, some low-budget space opera with terrible special effects. Pizza boxes littered the coffee table, the smell of pepperoni and garlic filling the room. We sat on opposite ends of her couch, a careful gulf of cushions between us. I kept my hands firmly on my lap, hyper-aware of my own body. At some point, she paused the movie mid-explosion. The screen froze on a spaceship that looked like it was made of cardboard. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "That depends," I said, "on whether it's about my favorite flavor of Pringles." She smiled, then sobered. "Why do you flinch when people compliment you?" I blinked. "I don't." "You do," she said gently. "I told you your joke timing was perfect during the game, and you made a face like I'd insulted your mother. Sarah said you're really good at your job, and you tried to change the subject. It's like praise makes you uncomfortable." I stared at the dark TV screen, my warped reflection staring back at me. "It's complicated," I said. "We've got 2 more hours of terrible CGI," she said. "I've got time." I took a breath. "My ex," I began, then stopped. I hadn't talked about her in years. We dated before the accident. She was with me when it happened. Things changed after. One night, she just broke down. She admitted she was struggling to be attracted to me, that she felt guilty for feeling that way. She cried and apologized and said she hated herself for it. I swallowed. The memory tasted like metal. "I hated myself for it too," I continued. "For putting her in that position, for being this thing she had to psych herself up to kiss. I swore off dating after that. Not to be noble or anything. I'm terrified of doing that to someone else, of damaging someone's self-image every time they look at the person next to them." Laura didn't say anything right away. She just listened, her face open, no flinching, no pity. "I get it," she said finally. "I've dated conventionally attractive guys who treated me like garbage, cheated, lied, made me feel small. I'd take someone kind and self-aware over perfect cheekbones any day." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to grab onto her words like a lifeline, but my brain was stubborn. "Easy for you to say when you're the one with the symmetrical face," I muttered. She snorted. "You think I don't have my own hang-ups? Trust me, I'm not exactly a supermodel. I just decided a while ago that I'm not going to let people who don't value me rent space in my head." My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Nina. "Are you on a date?" "Don't lie, I can feel it." I stared at the notification, then at Laura, who'd turned the movie back on. Her profile was lit by the blue glow of the screen, her glasses reflecting tiny planets. Was this a date? I didn't know. I didn't know how to label anything anymore. When the credits rolled, Laura muted the TV and turned to me, tucking one leg under herself. "This was fun," she said. "Want to hang out again next weekend? Just us. Maybe try a movie that's actually good this time." Something in my chest fluttered. Panic, maybe. Hope. Definitely. Sure, I said. Then, because my fear slammed its foot on the brakes, I added quickly, just so you know, I'm not looking for anything serious. A flicker of something crossed her face. Disappointment? Relief? I couldn't tell. She smoothed it over with a smile. Yeah, of course, no pressure. On the way home, that no pressure echoed in my head, sounding a lot like no expectations, which sounded a lot like the thing I'd been telling myself for years. Nina held me to my promise about therapy. Within a couple of weeks, I was sitting in a small office with a potted plant and a bookshelf full of self-help titles, across from Dr. Patel. She was calm, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made you realize you didn't know yourself as well as you thought. How long have you believed you're too unattractive to be loved? She asked in our first session, pen poised above her notepad. I stared at a spot on the carpet. Since the accident, I guess. Before that, I was average, invisible. Now I'm this. I told her about the blind dates, the mocking group chat, the texts that all said the same thing in different words. I told her about Laura, about her kindness, her invite, the way I'd thrown nothing serious in her face like a shield. So your appearance is a big part of your story, Dr. Patel said. But is it the whole story? It feels like it, I said. Does Laura seem like the kind of person who would date someone she found repulsive out of pity? She asked. The question startled me. No, I admitted. Then maybe, she said gently, your appearance isn't the only story here. I chewed on that as I left her office, the late afternoon sun making my scar itch. A few days later, I met Sam and Sarah for brunch. They were back to their chirpy selves, energized by the idea that I was getting out there again, even though I hadn't called anything with Laura a date. So, Sarah said, stirring her mimosa with a straw, you and Laura have been hanging out a lot. I sipped my coffee. Yeah. Are you finally a thing? She asked, eyes bright. Because I'm telling you, triple date vacations would be epic. I set my mug down a little too hard. My relationship status, I said slowly, is not a group project. Sam held up his hands. We're just excited for you, man. I know, I said. But every time you talk about me and Laura, it feels like you're checking off a box on your vision board, like you need us to be together to validate your own relationship. The words came out sharper than I intended. Their faces fell. Guilt pricked at me. Was I punishing them for past mistakes instead of letting them grow? That evening, walking with Laura in a park lined with bare trees and orange streetlights, the brunch conversation still gnawed at me. Our breath puffed in little clouds in the cold air. So, she said, kicking a stray leaf, can I ask you something without you making a joke to deflect? No promises, I said, but I smiled. Are you avoiding labels because of me? She asked. Or because you still hate yourself? The question stopped me in my tracks. We were under a street lamp, the light pooling around us. Her face was serious, vulnerable. I started, then had to stop and actually think. Both, I admitted. I'm scared. Of hurting you. Of being some social experiment you regret later. Of waking up one day and realizing you settled. She stepped closer. Do you trust me to know my own mind? She asked. Yes, I said immediately. Then trust me when I say I like you, she said. I like spending time with you. I like how you think. I like that you overanalyze everything but still show up. And yeah, I like how you look. Not despite your scars, including them. They're part of you. My heart did a weird stutter. The old reflexive response. You're wrong, I'm ugly. Rose to my lips, but I swallowed it. I want to try, I said. My voice shook. If you're okay with how messed up my head is, she smiled, eyes shining. We're all messed up. That's why therapists exist. We both laughed, the tension breaking. So, she said, boyfriend and girlfriend? The words felt big and fragile. Yay, I said. Boyfriend and girlfriend. We stood there under the street lamp, grinning at each other like idiots. The future suddenly both terrifying and possible. Months passed. We fell into an easy rhythm. Movie nights, shared memes, Sunday mornings in bed with coffee and crossword puzzles. I moved into her apartment after a while, our stuff blending together until I couldn't remember where my things ended and hers began. At a Friendsgiving in our new shared place, the living room was full of people balancing paper plates on their knees, the table sagging under the weight of casseroles. Laura introduced me to a coworker I hadn't met before, a woman named Jenna. This is my partner, Mark, Laura said, beaming. Jenna's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before she plastered on an overly bright smile. Oh, I've heard so much about you. The overcompensating was almost comical. She complimented my sweater twice. She laughed too hard at a mediocre joke. Later, after everyone left, Laura admitted that some colleagues still gossiped about her settling. I don't care, she said, shrugging, but her tight jaw told a different story. They're the ones missing out. Their judgment dug under my skin more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her, about what people thought of her choices. In my next session with Dr. Patel, I blurted out, I'm thinking about proposing. She smiled. How does that feel to say out loud? Terrifying, I said. Exciting. Wrong, right, all of it. What makes it feel wrong? She asked. I stared at my hands. Is it selfish to ask her to sign up for a lifetime of stares and gossip? To be the woman people think is desperate or a saint because she's with me? Are you protecting Laura from cruelty? Dr. Patel asked. Or are you using hypothetical bullies as an excuse to keep one foot out the door? The question hit at me in the gut. I'd always framed my reluctance as noble, self-sacrificing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just fear, wearing a hero costume. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself doom scrolling, I stumbled onto an anonymous forum thread that was clearly about us. Someone had posted a blurry photo from a distance, Laura and me at a coffee shop, with a caption like, "Would you date someone like this?" The comments were a mix of, "She's a saint," and "She must be desperate," and a few kind voices drowned out by the noise. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to dive into the spiral. Instead, I closed the tab. I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out a ring brochure I'd been hiding for weeks. The pages were creased from being opened and closed so many times. I spread it on the bed, the lamplight glinting off the glossy photos. My heart pounded, but this time, it wasn't purely fear. No more hiding behind my scars. No more using imaginary bullies as an excuse. I was going to propose. A few weeks later, I took Laura to a botanical garden. It was early spring. Flowers were just starting to bloom. We wandered along winding paths, her hand warm in mine, the air smelling like damp earth and new leaves. In a quiet corner near a small pond, I stopped. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the little box in my pocket. "Are you okay?" she asked, laughing a little. "You look like you're about to confess to a crime." "In a way," I said. "I am." I took a breath that felt like diving. Then I knelt, one knee pressing into the gravel. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears sprang to her eyes before I even said anything. "Laura," I managed, my throat tight. I spent a long time convinced I'd be alone, that I deserved to be, that no one could want this. I gestured vaguely at myself. "You proved me wrong. You made me want more than survival. Will you marry me?" She burst into tears, nodding so hard I worried she'd hurt her neck. "Yes," she choked out. "Yes, of course, yes." She pulled me up into a hug, nearly knocking me off balance. People nearby started clapping, a few phones discreetly raised. I tried not to cry myself and failed spectacularly. Later that day, we went to Sam and Sarah's house to share the news. They screamed when they saw the ring on Laura's finger. Sam lifted me in a bear hug that nearly cracked my ribs. Sarah hugged Laura, then me, tears streaming down her face. "We have to start looking at venues," Sarah said immediately. "And triple date vacations are back on the table." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling. Their joy felt genuine, uncomplicated. For the first time, their dream of triple dates didn't feel like a trap. It felt like something we could opt into on our own terms. Over dessert, Sarah pulled me aside into the hallway. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" she asked, wringing her hands. I followed her, my heart sinking. The serious tone, the way she avoided my eyes, it wasn't good. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And you're going to hate it? And me, maybe." "Great preamble," I said weakly. She took a deep breath. "I was the one who sent your photo to that group chat, the one Laura told you about. I meant to send it just to her privately, but I sent it to the whole project group by mistake. And when people started making jokes, I froze. I didn't shut it down. I didn't tell you. I've been carrying that around for years." The hallway seemed to narrow. The engagement ring on my finger felt suddenly heavy. "So all that time," I said slowly, "you let me think it was some random coworker. You let me wonder who weaponized my face. It was you." Tears spilled over her lashes. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I was ashamed. I kept telling myself I'd tell you when the time was right, but there was never a right time. And then Laura told me she'd told you about the chat, and I thought maybe I could just let it stay vague. But I don't want to keep secrets from you, not now." I stared at her. My mind flashed back to the balcony, to overhearing her call my scars an insecurity problem, to the years of ambush dates. Rage flared up, hot and bright. I could cut her off. I could tell her she was dead to me. I could walk back into the living room, grab Laura, and leave, building a new life with clean-cut boundaries and no messy forgiveness. Or I could accept that people who hurt you can also grow, that the same person who betrayed you years ago might be genuinely trying now. "I need time," I said finally. "What you did was a deep betrayal, not a mistake. You don't get to soften it with that word." She nodded, sobbing quietly. "I know, but I also know you've been there for me in 100 ways," I added. "And I don't want to make a decision about our entire friendship in a hallway between cake and coffee." She let out a strangled laugh. "Fair." We rejoined the others, the air between us thick with unspoken things. The next day, I texted her and asked to meet at a park near my apartment. We sat on a bench overlooking a small playground, kids shrieking in the distance. "I'm not going to pretend this is nothing," I said. "What you did with my photo, that was huge. It made me feel like a joke. It fed into every worst thing I believed about myself." She nodded, eyes red. "I know, I'm so sorry." "I can forgive you as a friend," I said slowly, "but I won't minimize the harm. And I need to ask myself, if keeping you in my life betrays my own boundaries, if I'm just accepting whatever treatment I get because I'm afraid of losing people." Tears spilled over again. "I've been in therapy too," she said, "for different stuff. I've talked about this, about how I center my own comfort over other people's pain. I don't expect you to just move on. If you want, I'll tell Laura everything myself. Or you can. Or we can do it together. Whatever you decide, I'll follow your lead." Her offering me that control did something weird to me. It made me feel respected, in a way she'd failed to do for years. In my next session, Dr. Patel and I unpacked it. "My instinct is to cut people off," I told her, "to make clean breaks. It feels safe. But I don't know if that's always healthy." "Sometimes," she said, "cutting people off is necessary self-protection. Other times, it's a way to avoid the discomfort of working through conflict. Only you can know which this is. But ask yourself, if you let Sarah stay in your life with new boundaries, Is that you betraying yourself? Or is it you allowing room for growth? Over dinner that night, I told Laura about Sarah's confession. She listened quietly, poking at her pasta. I kind of suspected, she admitted, the way Sarah talked about it back then. It always felt like there was more she wasn't saying, but I chose to focus on how she treats you now. People screw up, sometimes big. What matters to me is whether they own it and change. So you're okay with me keeping her in my life? I asked. I'm okay with you doing what feels right to you, she said, as long as you're not doing it because you think you have to earn friendship by swallowing hurt. We talked late into the night, going in circles and then slowly straightening out. In the end, we agreed. Sam and Sarah would stay in our lives, but with clearer boundaries. No more jokes about my looks, no more ambushes, no more using my love life as their entertainment. I texted Sarah. I accept your apology, but I'm not joking about my face anymore. If you slip, I will call you out. If you keep slipping, I'll step back. Deal? Her reply came quickly. Deal, thank you. Months later, our kitchen was full of the smell of roasting vegetables and cinnamon. Laura hummed as she cooked for another Friendsgiving, her hair up in a messy bun, an apron tied around her waist. I set the table, lining up plates and forks, glancing at my reflection in the microwave door. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch. I just saw myself. At the gathering, Sam raised his glass. To Mark and Laura, he said, for proving us wrong in the best possible way. Everyone laughed. I rolled my eyes but smiled, genuinely amused. Being their success story didn't sting anymore. It was just one small part of a much bigger picture that I actually had a say in. Later, Nina pulled me out onto the balcony, away from the noise. You realize you've spent the last 20 minutes talking about recipe ideas and not once about how hideous you think you are, she teased, bumping my shoulder with hers. I snorted. Personal growth, I guess? She squeezed my arm. I like this version of you, the one who lets himself be loved. A week after that, in what was technically my final weekly therapy session, before switching to monthly check-ins, Dr. Patel asked, what's changed since you first walked in here? I thought about it, about the party, the balcony, the Reddit post, the game nights, the ring. I still have bad days, I said. I still catch my reflection at weird angles and think, wow, that's a lot. But I love Laura more than I hate myself now. And that tips the scales, she smiled. That's a powerful shift. That night, lying in bed next to Laura, her breathing soft and even, I scrolled past my old Reddit post, the one that had started this whole chain reaction. My username stared back at me, frozen in time, still convinced I'd made peace with being alone. I opened a new post, an update 2.5 years later. I typed, I am 35, am very unattractive, and have made peace with being alone. My friends wouldn't stop trying to set me up. I asked what to do. Here's what happened. I wrote about the party, the boundaries, the therapy, the game nights, about Laura, about the proposal, about learning that my choice to be single had been valid, but so was my choice to risk being loved. I hit post, then put my phone face down on the nightstand. As I turned, Laura shifted in her sleep, reaching for my hand without waking up. Her fingers curled around mine, warm and solid. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of the ring on my finger, the faint hum of the city outside. The future was still terrifying. People would still stare. Some would still judge. My scars weren't going anywhere. But for the first time, the future also felt beautifully mine.